Welcome to Ethan Noir Detective. Like, subscribe, and stay with the mystery. Tell me which part of the world are you watching from? I am your host, Nero Wolfe. And now we turn our attention to a most curious news story.
Chapter 7 The Man with the Keys. Wolf likes lists. They let him reduce human chaos to ordinary columns. When he can't put a thing on a list, he assumes it's either irrelevant or deliberately hidden. The Hawthorne arm had too much that was deliberately hidden, which meant Wolf was in a mood that made the air in his office feel tighten. Inspector Kramer had gone back to the precincts to summon the kind of quiet manpower that couldn't pry open doors without telling the whole city about it. Wolf had gone back to his chair, which is where he does his best work and also where he punishes the world by refusing to meet its halfway. I brought him what I had: the facts, the scraps, the smell, the mechanical click, the fresh key filling, the illegal receipts, and the new bypass switch. Wolf listened, fingers stappled, eyes half lidded. When I finished, he said, "Now we narrow. Produce the key holders." I opened my notebook. Machine room access is supposed to be limited, according to the hall's receptionist, who became cooperative when I said the word police, like it was a Your help post out front, I said. You speak for management? Wolf eyes sharp and three. Daniel Holt, I said, building manager, Russell Messin, maintenance supervisor, and an outside contractor Holt hired for minor work, a guy named Eddie Bardi. Wolf's mouth tightened. Then the set was built by Brady, enabled by Messin, permitted by Holt, or some subset through. Oh, I said, Brady built it and keep the keys, and Holt just cashing checks. Wolf gas chilled. If Holt were merely negligent, he would now be calling attorneys, not smoothing my path with Polish evasions. That was a Wolf politely accusing Holtz of intelligence, which is not a compliment when the subject is crime. What about Bardi? Wolf asked. Durkin found him. I said, run a small contracting outfit, mostly patchwork, wall, carpet, lighting. The kind of guy you hire when you want things done quietly. Wolf made a sound, and quietly is often an adverb attached to illegality. I said, Saul dug up badly in voice history. He done work in the Hawthorne Arm before, minor stuff, but there's a gap. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Explain. His crew list, I said, for the supposed minor work last month. He filled our roster with Holt, just a page with name for building security, two carpenters, one electrician, one laborer, but there an empty line where a name should be, like someone removed it after the fact. And Saul found a cash withdrawal from Barley account the same week, the kind contractor used to pay under the table. Wolf's lips pressed together. A missing worker, paid in cash, a convenient anonymity. Yeah, I said, and if somebody needed a strong pair of arms to drag a man like a cargo, Wolf eyes didn't blink. Proceed. By late morning, I was back in the Hawthorne Arm, this time with an appointment. Hall couldn't refuse because Kramer had made a call that carried weight and meanings. Hall received me in his office with the same polished composure, but the polish had a fade, cracked now, like a varnish layer had been dried too quickly. Mr. Goodman, he said, standing, Inspector Kramer's office has been most insistent. I'm a bad influencer, I said. We need to talk about keys. His smile didn't reach his eyes. We were already discussed maintenance procedure. We will discuss your talent for discussing. I said, now we are going to talk about who can open what. Hall's jaw tightened. Mr. Mason handles. I know, I cut in, and so do I. The machine room keys are held by you, Mason, and a contractor named by Bradley. At Bradley's name, Holt eyes freckled, another tidy confusion. Mr. Barley is a reputable contractor, Holt said. So, is the elevator in daylight? I replied. Bring him in. Holt hesitated. He's working on another side. Then call him, I said, unless you don't want him to hear the police are sniffing. That did it. Holt picked up the phone and made the call. Barley arrived an hour later, and he didn't look like a man who painted, trimmed, and patched plaster. He looked like a man who enjoyed being underestimated. Stocky, mid-30s, hands carried in a way that suggested actual labor, face sharpened enough to be alert. He wore work boots but a clean jacket, like he wanted to signal both working man and professional. His eyes moved consistently, taking in the room, the exits, the balance of power. He shook my hand. His glare was hard. His smile wasn't. Archie Goodman, I said, Nero Wolfe's office. I know who you are, Wiley said. I also know why you are here. Then we can skip the small talk. I said, you didn't work in this building last month. Legal work, Wiley said quickly. Paint, patches, nothing fancy. Funny, I said, pulling my notebook from my pocket and flipping to the page where I had copied the ship's item. Because shipped for your job include plasterboard, tracking light, copper roll, and plywood in a quantity that suggests you were not patching crack, you were building something. Barley eyes narrowed. Ship can lie. I stared at him. Man who say that I knew you wrote the lie? Halls cleared his throat. Mr. Barley held up a hand without looking at Hall. I do what I am contracted to do. That's it. By Hall, I said. Barley eyes slid toward Hall, then away. By the building? Through management? Right, I said. So you build a corridor between floors. That's ridiculous. Barley snapped. Then explain the bypass switch in the elevator control cabinet. I said, clean now, tangle, hidden under tape labeled inspect. That's not pen, that's engineering. Barely's jaw worked. He looked at Halls, and Hall looked at Mason, who had appeared quietly in the doorway as if summoned by guilt. Mason's face was already sweating, and it wasn't warm in that office. I turned to Mason. Let's hear it. Why is there a bypass switch? Mason swallowed hard. Safety, he said. Safety? I urged. Minor safety upgrades. Mason insisted. Was too quick. The elevator old. We needed a bypass for inspection. For emergency. I cut him off. Then why had it under tape? That's considerate, I said. Also nonsense. Wolf had told me once that people lie best when they can borrow truth as camouflage. Mason was borrowing the word safety like a thief borrowing a suit. Barely leaned forward. You people don't know what you are talking about. You got some tenant stories and you are making a circus? We have scuff mark in a pocket between floor, I said. Mark from dragging not walking, two tenant missing, illegal materials, cash delivery after midnight, and now a bypass switch. Barely smile vanished. You can't prove I installed anything. Whole voice went sharp. Mr. Goodman, this is harassment. Harassment is a cut call, I said. This is an investigation now. Where were you Sunday night after midnight? Barley's eyes flashed. Home. Alone? I asked. He hesitated. Half a bit. Yeah, alone. That's heartbeat had a lot of weight. I looked at Holt, and you. Holt's face stayed smooth. I was at home. Alone? I asked. His smile tightened. With my wife. Convenient, I said. Mason looked like he wanted to sit down but couldn't find a chair. I left them there with their Daniels because arguing with Lyle is like a rustling soap. You can do it all day and still feel slippery. Instead, I went upstairs to the sixth floor, where Anal Dana had first brought the problem to the wolf like a man delivering a live grenade. Dana answered. His door looked worse than before. He had slept, but sleep had not improved him. He looked like a man whose mind kept walking into the corridor even when his body stayed home. Mr. Goodwin, he said quickly. Is she? Not yet, I said, but I needed you to identify someone. He blinked. Who? A contractor named Barely, I said. Stocky, sharp face, hard eyes. Might be with management sometime. Diner face tightened. I will see him. Good, I said. Come with me. We went to the hall near the elevator. Halt office was downstairs, but the management people sometimes floated up like bad air when they were checking on problem. I don't have to wait long. 10 minutes later, Barry stepped out of the elevator with machine behind him, both of them looking they most of them looking like they just fallen something unpleasant. Diner had tightened on my sleeves. That's him, he whispered. Barely glanced down the hall, spotted us, and his expression shifted. An audience with a touch of alarm, like a man seeing a witness he had not accounted for. You sure? I murmured to Diner. Diner nodded, eyes fixed. I heard him arguing with Rush, he said in the lobby, about records. Barely told him. Diner swallowed, then repeated the word carefully, as if afraid they might explode. He said, you can't see what you don't of. My eyebrow rose, and Rush said, Dinah voice dropped. Rush said, I owe the truth. Barley's eyes met mine for a second, and in that second I sighed, not just anger but calculation. The look of a man deciding whatever you were dangerous enough to deserve the dark between floor. Then he turned away sharply and marched toward the stairwell with the motion trailing. I let them go. I had what I needed. Truth is a dangerous acid in a building full of false walls. Back at Brownstone that evening, Wolf listened from his chair while I laid it out. The key holder, the missing crew name, motion sweating, safety upgrade story, and diner identification of Bardi as the man who argued with Rusk about records. When I finished, Wolf sat silent a moment, eyes half closed. Then he opened them fully, and they were bright with that cold play he gets when a riddle narrows. The hallway is a tool, Wolf said, and the tool has an honor, I replied. Indeed, Wolf's mouth tightened. We must determine which of these men, the manager, the supervisor, the contractor, wield it with purpose. Could be more than one, I said. Fancy prices are often inelegant, but they are also common. He leaned forward a friction. Archie, the missing worker paid in cash, find him. So already trying, I said. But guys who get paid under the table don't leave forwarding addresses. Then use your imagination, Wolf said. That's dangerous advice, I told him. It is necessary, Wolf said, because we must locate the missing person before the agent strike the site. Wolf leaned back again, and for a moment his expression softened, not with kindness, but with certainty. The riddle sharpens, he said, and when it sharpens, it cuts. Chapter 8. The Disappearing Floor's Real Job. Wolf solved it from his chair, the way he always does when the word insists on running around like a lunatic. The so-called ghost floor, he said, is not a caprice, it is a function. I was in the office, half standing, half leaning, because Wolf's pronouncement have a way of making you forget you're tired. He had been quiet for an hour, eyes half shut, fingers stapled, while I reported what Saul had scarfed up on Freddie Crew and what Darkin hadn't yet found about the missing paid under the table man. When Wolf finally spoke, it was with that deliberate clarity that make you feel the puzzle is embarrassed for making you work so hard. It is for transport, Wolf said. I foreign. Transport of what? Wolf looked at me as if the question were decorative. Whatever must be moved through the building without tenant observing it. The contrivance, blackout, pocket lining, folding corridor is advised to shift cargo. And the missing people, I asked. Wolf gave Hermine a complication, perhaps an accident, perhaps a necessity. Once Mr. Rush discovered what was being transported, that landed. So, the hallway's real job is smuggling, I said. Wolf's mouth tightened. A vulgar word for an efficient practice. I grinned. You can call it unauthorized commerce if it makes you feel better. I does not, Wolf said. Now you will locate the route from the pocket landing to whatever the cargo proceed. Meanwhile, we'll go back, I said. Wolf nodded. With the locksmith if necessary, and with the inspector Kramer. Kramer will love that, I said. Wolf's eyes narrowed. He will not be consulted regarding his affection. That was Wolf's way. He didn't ask the word to cooperate. He assumed it would once he applied pressure in the correct place. We went that night not because it was romantic, but because criminals keep bunkers over, only when they are amateur. The Hotman has been running it slow after midnight, which meant it's taken preferred the audience asleep. Kramer met us in the lobby with two pen-cloth men, and the same expression had worn the first time. Resentment mixed with curiosity. You better be right, he grumbled. I am always right, Wolf said, and it was not a boast so much as an observation. Kramer snorted. Yeah, that was scares me. We rode the elevator, and this time we brought more than our own light. We brought our own intent. I tapped the flashlight under the handle again. The camera watched the panel like it might confess. Also steady, chin lifted, and as if daring the building to try tricks on him twice. At 6, I felt the familiar tighten in my stomach. Not far exactly, but the anticipant of a lie about the perform. The lurch came, the light died, full black, clean as a switch being flipped. The flashlight beam steady, thin and bright, slicing across the car's sidewalk. Cameron muted. There's that seam. Yep, I said, and tonight we don't just admire it. The doors opened halfway on the pocket landing. The same concrete strip, the same dust, the same scuff that make my skin crawl. In the beam, the long scrap on the floor looked even uglier, like a sentence written with force. Cameron's man leaning forward, tense. Wolf does not move until I move. Then he stepped out carefully, placing his foot as if the dust were an insult. Here I am sat, aiming the beam at the sidewall seam, just inside the elevator. The seam ran straight in, too straight in. It had the faint groove of a track, and near the bottom, half hidden by shadow, was a small metal edge that could have passed from a part of the car. Reinforcement if you were not already convinced the building was lying. I took my pocket knife because it's a tool had always a comfort and slipped the blade into the stream. The panel gave with a soft sigh. It slid, not wide, only a foot at first, then another foot, then enough to reveal what it had been hiding. A short corridor jammed into the space beside the car like a secret folding into a coat lining. Temporary wall on the tracks, cheap plasterboard facing, wiring running along the base, clipped to a quick connect strip, a lightning fixture that plugged into someone like a man plugging in a lamp. A hallway you can fold up is still a hallway, it just doesn't want to be seen. Camera eyes widened. One of his men whispered across. Whole voice was dry, theatrical. As I said, I stepped into the short corridor, keeping the flashlight beam ahead. There smelled faintly of glue and fresh paint, like a disguise recently reapplied, and I caught a draft of warm air from a duct line, the kind that could make a brass plate feel alive if you don't know better. At the end of the short corridor was a steel door, the third door Wolf had found in the Phantom Hall, now reachable with light and witnesses. Not like the paint apartment doors upstairs. This one was industrial, heavy, grey, and meant to keep things in or keep people out. I had a lock that claimed to new key, I said. Kramer looked at me. You got it? Not on my key ring, I said, but I know hose is filled. We had missing bright key on an evidence chain already. Kramer had taken it in the previous day after a conversation that involved Arai's voice and a threat of arrest. Kramer pulled it from an envelope now, held it up in the flashlight beam. That's one, he asked. That's one, I said. He slid it into a lock. It fit like it belonged. The steel door opened with a reluctant groan. Beyond it, it was a sealed service corridor, narrowed, utilitarian, unpainted in place, the kind of passage that exit in all buildings for wire, pipes, and secrets. It ran parallel to the elevator shaft, invisible from the tenant work. There was colder hair, less human. Kramer men went first, hands near their gun, eyes scanning. Wolf followed, and I eyed him for sign of strain. He was breathing a little heavier, but his posture was stubborn. Wolf would rather die than admit a hallway had beaten him. The corridor led after 20 yards to a downward turn, another door that opened onto a step service stair. He descended into the basement, and I felt the building mood change, the way you feel weather change in your bones. At the bottom, we come out behind the boiler area, behind the very well where I found the hidden receipts. Ahead was the story room, Mason hair car, all junk. The same great door, the same near lock. Camera used the same key again. Inside the room locked at first glance like storage. Creates tagged, box labeled with blind word that mean nothing. Parts, supplies, fixture, everything neat enough to suggest someone cared about how it looked. Too neat for junk. Camera stabbed in, nostril flaring. That doesn't smell like old furniture. It smelled like money, I said. Wolf didn't answer. He was examining the stake pattern. Wolf didn't see pile. He see intention. The crate was arranged with a seal, clear line for moving thin quickly. That's not how people store junk. That's how they stage inventory. Cam turned to one of his men per one. The man proceeded a small tool and worked at the crate corner. Wood cracked, nail complained, the lid come up. Inside were boxes, clean sealed retail boxes, phones, tablet, new enough to shine under the bare bulb. I let out a low whistle. Well, that's festive. Cameron's face went hard. This is thrift, stolen, stacked, snapped. I said because the word lined up nicely and because it felt good to name what the building had been hiding. The disappearing floor wasn't hiding a ghost, it was hiding a business. Wolf moved closer, peering into the crate without touching. Contraband electronic, easily moved, easily slaughtered, easily sold, easily explained away if you never see them pass through the lobby. And the elevator is the courier, I murmured. Kramer pointed at the corridor entrance behind us. They bring it in through here, moved it between floor, and then what? Load it out through the front door. I shook my head. No, too visible. There got to be a pickup point. I swept the flashlight beam around the room. Then near the far wall, at another door, another one, half hidden behind the stack crate. A foreign keyhole opening, perhaps, or a passage to the loading dock. Cameraman moved toward it, but Wolf spoke sharply. Wait, they stopped. Everyone stopped when Wolf's voice went like that, because it had authority without volume. Wolf pointed with a thick finger, the workbench. I sat under a bare light, cluttered with tool and tape, and the detonator of a man holding in shortcuts. On it lay a stub of paper, partly torn, weighed down by a screwdriver. I picked up. It was a letter slip, number and shorthand. The kind men use when they don't want a full book lie around. And on the slip was a familiar pattern. 6 something, 7 something, 6 something. The same structure as the pencil sequence on the torn envelope corner from the rush compartment. My skin went cold. I looked at Wolf. He found the ledger. Wolf's eyes were heavy-lidded now, but bright. Yes, Cameron soared softly. So Rush was onto them? And Harkness? I said. Wolf's mouth tightened. Perhaps she was incidental. Perhaps she was used. Perhaps she saw something and became inconvenient. Cameron snapped. Where are they? Wolf didn't answer immediately. He studied the room again. The seals, the stack rate, the foreign door half hidden. Then he said calmly, Not there. That was comforting. Cameron turned to his men with such every inch. They started moving crates, checking behind stacks, testing wall, dust rose, wood ground. The room neatness began to collapse. I stood near the workbench, staring at the ladder slab. The number were not just number now. They were a routing code, a map of movement inside the building. And Rusk had written the same, maybe decoded it before someone tore it from him. They turned him into inventory, I said quietly. Kramer heard me, and his jaw clutched like I might break a tooth. Wolf's gaze remained steady, cold as a winter glass. The man who built this corridor, he said, did not build for his amusement. They built it for profit, and when profit was threatened, they applied force. Kramer looked at him. You got a name yet? Wolf's eyes narrowed. The owner of the toll is the man who profits most and who can command it both access and violation. We shall soon confirm which of them that is. Later back at the brainstorm, because Wolf insists on doing his thinking with his chair recognize him, I summarized the find for him again. Thought he had there and seen it. Wolf listened. He allowed himself something rare, a small smile. Not warm, not friendly. the way a cat smiles at the mouse that has started to slow down. The elevator, Wolf said, is a carrier. Mr. Rush was the letter that objecting to being delivered. I swallowed and later that object are sometimes destroyed. All finished, voice flat, unless we arrive in time. The room went quiet around that. Freight footsteps sounded upstairs, steady, domestic, as if the world was still normal. But I could still see the scuff mark on the pocket landing and the long scab in the dust. You don't drag a suitcase like that. You drag a man, and now we knew why. Chapter 9. Wolf sets the trap in the dark. Wolf's favorite kind of trap is the kind that doesn't look like a trap until the victim is inside it. He does not use rope or pets. He uses human habit, greed, fear, pride, and he tightens them until they do the work for him. After the basement find, Inspector Kramer wanted to seal the building, drag everyone downtown, and let the papers have a field day and luxury apartments. Wolf refused him with the calm arrogance of a man refusing bad wine. No, Wolf said, not yet. Kramer's face reddened. We got stolen good in the basement and kidnapping shoot in the elevator. What do you mean? Not yet. I mean, Wolf replied, that if you seal the building prematurely, the perpetrator will attempt to erase the mechanism. They will reset the so-called ghost floor. They will destroy evidence, and if the missing person remain alive, his voice went a shade colder. They will be moved. They will be moved, perhaps permanently. Kramer opened his mouth, shut it, and made a sound like a man swallowing his anger because it was louder in his own throat. Wolf continued, we will compel the culprit to act, and how, I asked. Wolf eyes lied to me by summoning him. He decided the message as if he were writing a dinner invitation, not beating criminals. Mr. Holt, Mr. Mason, Mr. Bailey, and Mr. Haley, your presence is required at the Hawthorne lobby at 9 this evening to clarify certain accounting irregularity discovered by Mr. Wolf. Non-attendant will be interpreted as obstruction and will be communicated to Inspector Kramer. Wolf, now that men like Hall doesn't fear shame. They fear paperwork, official, signed and carried by someone who can arrest them. At 8:50, at 8:50, I was in the Hawthorne lobby with Wolf Kramer and two of Kramer men positioned where they looked like broad visitors but were actual thunder in plain clothes. The lobby's marble gleamed, the brass shone, the chandelier offered the usual promise of respectability, but now the promise felt like a cheap suit on a criminal. At 9 sharp, Holt arrived first with Mason, a step behind him, wearing the same good suit and the same bad manner. He wore his best smile, but it was tense, like a man trying to hold a door shut with his teeth. Mason followed, sweating despite the cold air, his eyes darting to the elevator as if it might accuse him. Barely come lost, walking with the lost confidence of a man who believes he can still talk his way out. Four men pretending they were not sweating. Wolf stood near the elevator doors, coat buttoned, hat in hand, looking as if the lobby were his office and the building were a client who had just left. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The silence around him did the work. Gentlemen, Wolf said, we will ride the elevator together. Mr. Goodwin will operate it. Hall's smile stiffened. This is ridiculous. Wolf's eyes stayed on him. Ridiculousness is your choice architecture. Barely scoffed. You can't. Cameron stepped forward, badge catching the chandelier light like a small thread. You can and you will. Mason swollen, his Adam's apple bobbing like a frightened fish. We got in. It was crowded. Wolf filling space with his presence. All Mason pressed close to each other like a man who suddenly wished they were strangers. Brady in the back corner with his jaw set, and me near the panel with the flashlight rigged under the rail, the way I did done before. But tonight we had more than a flashlight. We had hidden lamps, small battery powered lights taped under the rail and behind the corner modeling, enough to give a dim glow with the main light died. We had chuckle on a part of the quiet wheel housing I could reach through a maintenance gap. Cameraman had done that with a grim dedication expression that suggested he enjoyed vandalizing fancy buildings, and we had camera waiting outside the car door with the kind of patience that comes from waiting to be right. Wolf's plan was simple: force the mechanism to repeat while the preparator watched, and then let their reflex betray them. I pressed 6. Holt eyes flickered to the panel. Why 6? Because I like it, I said, and because the lights seemed to perforate. The elevator rose. 5. Then the latch hit hard. The light went out, full blackout, clean as a blade. But our hidden lamp snapped on under the rail, casting a dim, ugly glow that shone face in the worst possible light. On a sphere on Mason, tight calculation hold, and a sudden stiffening on Brady that wasn't confused, it was recognition. Darkness is just a cover charger. Our light showed who had paid it. In the dim glow, I watched the chuckle mark we did place. The wheel spun just a twitch, then stopped, leaving a fresh smear of chuckle without the travel you did except if we were moving smoothly. The elevator doesn't mean flawed was between stories. The doors opened halfway to the pocket landing, dust, concrete, the long scrap, the scuff marks, all waiting like a stage set for a bad play. Wall didn't move. He didn't need to. His voice came calm and cutting in the dimness. You see, he said, what you have built. Whole voice was steady. This proves nothing. It proved everything, Wolf replied, because it will now be used. A soft click came from the sidewall seam, the panel cracked. I felt the hair on my arm lifted. The seam shifted. Not much, just enough to show movement like a breath. Then footsteps, not our. Two set, quick, cautious, moving in the narrow space beyond the ceiling panel. They concealed short corridor. Dreaded heat jerked, missing breath caught. Hold eyes widened a fraction. Then narrow, he tried to regain control. Camera voice calm, muffled but sharp from the lobby side. Police don't move. There was a scramble sound in the hidden corridor, like shoe trying to reverse traction on cheap carpet. The panel side wider. A figure appeared, young, weary, face turtle in the dim light. He froze as if his brain had not yet accepted the word police. His hands were gripped someone, a strap, and behind him, dragging into the opening, came a shape that made my stomach drop. Taped across his mouth, wrist bound, eyes unfocused, dodged. He wore rumble cloth and the kind of a slack expression that says something had been dragged but not finished. Calvin Rush, alive. For 1 second, no one moved. Even cameramen seemed to pause, as if the sight of a living victim had turned the scene from theory into flash. Then Brady lunged, not toward Rush, toward the young man in the corridor, shoving him back as if to block the opening. More Brady snarled. The young man stumbled, terrified, and in that stumble his grip slipped. Rush's shoulder hit the floor with a dull thud, and a muffled sound came from behind the tape. Kramer man shrugged forward, but the elevator doors began to close automatically, like the machine had been built not just to open, but to protect itself. I shoved my hand into the door gap, cursing as the metal pinched. Hold it, I barked. The door reopened, a friction enough. Kramer forced his arm through and grabbed Bradley's jacket, yanking hard. Brady stumbled forward into the car, face twisting with range. You are under arrest. Kramer snapped. Brady tried to wrench free. Kramer first came up and introduced itself to Brady's jaw with professional impotence. Brady went limp enough to be manageable. Holt voice rose. Shrill now. This is intensity. Wolf turned his head slowly. His eyes brightened in the dim light. It is arithmetic. Mr. Holt, your business required an elevator? That's good lie. Your business required it to tell the truth once. Mason made a sound like a man joking on his off air. I didn't. I just. You enabled it, Wolf said flatly. Wolf said flatly, and you profited. The young man in the corridor, Bradley Runner, the missing name on the crew list, tried to pull back into the concealed passage. Durkin, who had been waiting out of sight with one of Kramer's men near the service door SS, appeared like a sudden wall and grabbed him. The runner threshed, then sighed when he realized there was nowhere to go that wasn't law. Rush's eyes rolled toward me. His mouth worked uselessly under the tape. I crouched, peeled the tape back carefully. He sucked air like it was the first honest thing he had in the day. Mr. Goodwin, he rasped. Yeah, I said you picked a lousy time to be right. His gaze flickered past me toward Holt and Brady. The ledger. He risked they. I know I said save it. You can testify later. You are not part of the inventory. Cameron barked orders. His men pulled Brady into handcuffs. They seized Holt. When Holt tried to step back as if he could retreat into authority, Mason didn't move at all. He simply folded inward, like a man whose pain had finally accepted the truth. Wolf stood there in the dim light, unruffled, as if this were all an inevitable conclusion to a discussion he had already settled in his mind. He looked down at Rush, then at me. Archie, he said, you will see that Mr. Rush received medical attention on it, I said. And Wolf added, his voice still calm. Now we will run where Miss Harkness is. Kramer glared at Wolf. You think she's still alive? Wolf's eyes narrowed. I do not indulge hope, Inspector. I indulge probability. They kept Mr. Rusk alive because they needed to move him. They may have kept her alive for the same reason, or because they have not yet decided what to do with her. Cameron's jaw tightened. Then we find her tonight. Wolf gave a small nod. Yes, the trap had snapped shut. The ghost floor had done its real job in front of witnesses. Under our light, Wolf had forced the riddle to repeat, and in repeating it, the building had confessed. But confessed is only useful if you get to the last page, and we still had one missing thread somewhere in the dark between floors. Chapter 10. The answer on the bottom panel. By the time the stretcher arrived in the Hawthorne Arm lobby, the marble had lost its confidence. A building can keep an appearance, but the trouble is private. It can't when uniformed men and handcuffs had a bound tenant, are spread out under chandelier like an exhibit. Calvin Rush lay on the stretcher, with his eyes open, gray with shock but sharp enough to take his face. One of the cameramen had cut the tape away and loosened the binding. Rush's mouth was dried, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like a signed paper. I told them. He reposed. I did go to the police. I leaned in. You did, I said. Just took the scenic road. His eyes did fritter the ledger in my desk. Yeah, I said, we found the stub. Wolf going to want the whole book. Rush tried to nod and winced. Halt, Mason, Brady. The shipment. Save your breath. I told him you will need it to make them miserable later. Nearby, Kramer's man scuffed Brady Runner, the missing name from the crew list, who now looked less like a tough under the table worker and more like what he was, a scared doll. Holt's face was peeled and furious. Mason was peeled and defeated. Barry had a brass developing under his jaw, and the flat-eyed look of a man doing fast math and finding the answer ugly. Kramer catch my eyes. We will sweep the building, he said. Every service door, every service corridor, every story, every inch. If that woman here, if she here, I corrected soft. Kramer's mouth tightened. He hated that kind of realism. They found Felicity Harkness 2 hours later, not dead, not healthy, but alive, sedated and locked in a narrow utility room of the sealed service corridor, with a blanket thrown over her like an afterthought. She woke in the ambulance long enough to stare at the ceiling and whisper one word, water, before sleep took her again. That was the night's last losing thread pulled tight. The next morning, Wolf had his customary office gathering, the one he insisted on, even what the police would rather do things in a grey room with metal chair. Wolf, like his conclusion, delivered where can control the light and the tempo. Kramer agreed because Kramer had seen enough to know what the Wolf was going to give him what he needed, a clean chain. Holt, Mason, Brady, and Haley arrived under his coat and sat in the red leather chair like a man forced to wipe their old reputation down. Their bravado had crushed. The office had the effect. The room is civilized, and civilization made guilt look roared. Rusk did not attend. He was in a hospital bed, alive and furious, which is the best possible condition for a witness. But the ledger did attend it, handed over by Kramer after his man had recovered it from Rusk's desk, along with the torn envelope piece that now had its matching half. Wolf opened the ledger as if it were a menu. He had the same calm he always had when the answer was already settled. Gentlemen, Wolf said, your enterprise was not a ghost story, it was a commerce. Holmes lifted his chin. I don't know what you mean. Holmes sat very straight, like a Porsche could be an alleyway. Wolf's eyes barely moved. Mr. Holt, you signed for a last night delivery of construction material and of merchants, your authority cash payments. Your name appear here. He taped the ledger with a thick finger. You are not merely negligent, you are central. Brady barked a short lodge. The book could be everything, number don't prove. Wolf's gaze cut him off, number after more truthful than man. This sequence he held up the matched envelope. Now hold. is a routing code 6 with a pendant identifier. It corresponds to the elevator behavior and the movement of contraband into and out of the concealed service corridor. Mason hands switched together. It was just a switch, he fluttered. A bypass, Brady paid, said it was for inspections. Wool had titled a fraction. You installed it? Mason's shoulders sagged. Yes, he said. He said it was a safer, that it would keep tenant out from the way where they move supplies. Pretty snapped. Don't put it on me alone. The manager wanted it quiet. Whole face frowned. I didn't hurt anyone. Wolf's voice stayed mild. You did not need to. Your invention did it for you. That line hit like a slap because it was true. Hall's crime wasn't the muscle. It was the permission. Wolf continued. The elevator stopped where the building had no listing floor because you created a pocket. An engineering paused, a staging space. The blackout was not a malfunction. It was a cover. The folding corridor was not an illusion. It was a mechanism built on track where to quick connect lighting, concealed by a sliding panel within the core. He looked at Brady. You construct the corridor? Brady jawed, clutch. It was carpentry. They told me it was for theft, Wolf said, and did not raise his voice. He did not have to. Truth is loud when it's finally in the room. Wolf turned a page of the ledger as calm as Frisk checking a rose. Your contraband consists of stolen electronics. They were staged in the basement storage room, discussed and all junk. The so-called ghost floor allowed you to transport shipment without passing through the lobby, where tenant and doorman more observed. When Mr. Rush discovered this ledger, he became an inconvenient page. You attempted to fill him away. Hall's eyes flashed. We didn't. Brady's men. Wolf's gaze shifted to Mason. And you, Mr. Mason, provide access keys, panel maintenance record, laundry to console the work. Your logbook was too clean because it had been rewritten. Mason whispered. I didn't think was not required. Wolf said. Only complaints. Brady's shoulder tightened. Rush wouldn't shut up. He kept saying he had go to the police. Wolf nodded, as if Brady had just confirmed a detail in a botanical text. Yes, he told Mr. Clay, you can't bury it in paperwork. He believed truth was an acid. You treated it as a threat. Kramer stood the room, suddenly feeling small around. That's enough, he said. He glazed at the water. He glazed at his men. Take him. Hall started to protect. Reddy started to sever. Cameraman hauled them up and marched them toward the door with the efficiency impatience of law. Wool watched them go without satisfaction. Because Wool doesn't gloat, he simply concludes. When the room was quiet again, Wolf leaned back in his chair as if restoring order to the world by reclaiming his rightful posture. I exhaled, so the answer was on the bottom panel all along. I said 6 and 7. Wolf's eyes drifted to me. The answer was on the panel because the panel was the instrument, a box that goes up and down unless a light teach its tricks. Kramer paused at the doorway. You're coming down to the precinct later, he asked grudgingly. No, Wolf said at once. Cameron shortened figure. I said I will bring you whatever you need, and Resk will sing when you can stand. Cameron grunted and left. Fritz appeared in the doorway, silent, as if he had been waiting for justice to finish so dinner could begin. Mr. Wolf, he said, luncheon. Wolf nodded, already moving the case into the past. Yes, Fritz. As we rose, I brought off the Hawthorne arm elevator, now sealed and inspected and stripped of its little secret seam. I imagined it doing honest work again, up, down, open, shut. No blackout, no pocket, no corridor that blinked. And if it ever stopped on a floor that doesn't exit again, well, now it had a whole precinct that knew how to read the darkness.